Imagine a painting so strange, so complex, and so disturbing that even 500 years later, experts still argue about what it means. A world filled with giant birds, humans riding fish, transparent spheres, hybrid monsters, and twisted landscapes that feel more like dreams than reality. This is the Garden of Earthly Delights, a triptych that defies logic, religion, and reason. Created around 1500 by Hieronymus Bosch, it remains one of the most mysterious works of art in human history. But this is not just a painting. It is a map of desire, sin, paradise, punishment, and perhaps salvation. To understand the garden, we must understand the man behind it, Hieronymus Bosch. Born around 1450 in the Dutch city of 's-Hertogenbosch, Bosch lived during a time of religious fear and social upheaval. The Black Death had shaken Europe, the Church was losing authority, and a new age of exploration and science was beginning. Bosch was both a product and a critic of this chaotic world. He was deeply religious, yet fiercely critical of corruption and human vice. His paintings were not simple illustrations. They were warnings. But Bosch was not a preacher. He was a dreamer, and his dreams were often nightmares. The late Middle Ages were obsessed with the concept of sin. The Church preached that humanity was always on the edge of damnation, and even small temptations could lead to eternal suffering. Art was meant to teach moral lessons, heaven and hell, virtue and vice. But Bosch went further. He didn't just show sin, he explored it. He painted what desire looked like, how temptation felt, and what hell might truly be. His work was not a sermon from the pulpit. It was a mirror held up to the darkest corners of the human soul. Between 1490 and 1510, Bosch created his magnum opus, the Garden of Earthly Delights. It's not a single painting, but a triptych, 3 panels that unfold like a story. The left panel depicts the Garden of Eden, the creation of Adam and Eve, a world untouched by sin. The center panel is Earth, a surreal playground of pleasure, desire, and excess. The right panel is Hell, a nightmarish landscape of punishment, terror, and eternal torment. Together, they form a cycle: innocence, temptation, and damnation. But nothing about this story is simple. Who commissioned the garden? No one knows for sure. Some believe it was created for a noble wedding, a warning about lust. Others think it was a private work for a wealthy patron obsessed with alchemy and forbidden knowledge. What's certain is that Bosch never explained it. He left no letters, no notes, no writings about its meaning. And perhaps that's the point. The garden was never meant to be explained. It was meant to be experienced. The left panel of Bosch's triptych shows a familiar scene, the Garden of Eden. But look closely. This is no ordinary paradise. God, depicted as Christ, introduces Eve to Adam. Animals roam freely. Strange hybrid creatures wander the landscape, and the air feels calm, but unsettling. Even here, Bosch plants the seeds of danger. Exotic animals devour each other. A cat clutches a mouse, a subtle reminder that violence and death existed even before humanity's fall. And in the background, fantastical creatures hint that creation itself is not as orderly as we believe. This is not the Eden of perfect harmony. It is a test, the beginning of a story that will spiral out of control. The central panel is the most famous and the most confusing. A vast landscape filled with hundreds of naked figures engaged in bizarre activities, riding animals, bathing in strange pools, climbing giant fruit, even merging with plants and objects. To many, it looks like paradise. But Bosch is not celebrating pleasure. He is exposing its madness. The giant berries and oversized birds symbolize lust and excess. Transparent spheres represent the fragility of desire, beautiful but fleeting. People trapped inside bubbles show how easily humans become prisoners of their own cravings. There's no violence here, no visible punishment, but that's the point. The real danger isn't hell. It's forgetting that hell exists. Some images in the central panel still defy explanation. Why are people riding fish? Why are humans emerging from giant shells? Why do bizarre hybrid creatures stare back at us as if we are the ones on display? Scholars offer many theories. Some see alchemical symbolism, the transformation of the soul through desire. Others see a satire of human folly. And some believe Bosch intentionally filled the painting with contradictions to show that sin cannot be neatly categorized. It is not meant to be understood. It is meant to overwhelm, to confuse, to mirror the chaotic nature of human temptation. The right panel is Bosch's masterpiece of horror. It is not the fire and brimstone hell of medieval tradition. It is colder, more psychological, but distorted reflection of the sins we saw in the central panel. Musicians are tortured by their own instruments. Gluttons are devoured by monstrous beasts. Lustful souls are fused with grotesque objects. A half-human, half-egg creature, known as the Tree Man, stares directly at us, as if judging our complicity. This is not divine punishment. It is self-destruction, the inevitable result of unchecked desire. One of the most accepted interpretations of the Garden of Earthly Delights is that it's a moral warning, a visual sermon about the dangers of temptation. The left panel shows the purity of creation. The center reveals the madness of indulgence. and the right is the inevitable consequence: damnation. In this reading, the painting is not meant to entertain or even enlighten. It is meant to scare. It is a medieval cautionary tale, painted not with words, but with nightmares. Another theory suggests that Bosch was deeply influenced by alchemy, a mystical science that sought not only to turn lead into gold, but also to purify the soul. The strange plants, spheres, and hybrid creatures in the central panel may symbolize stages of alchemical transformation. Pleasure, in this reading, is not sin. It's the material through which the soul is refined. Hell, then, is not punishment, but the failure of transformation. The soul trapped in material chaos. Some historians believe Bosch was secretly connected to heretical sects that challenged church doctrine. One such group, the Adamites, preached a return to innocence through nudity and free love, ideas that echo in the central panel. If true, this would mean the garden is not a condemnation of pleasure, but a radical manifesto, a vision of humanity liberated from sin by embracing its natural desires. No wonder the Church never officially endorsed the painting. It was too dangerous. Modern psychologists have offered yet another interpretation, that Bosch painted the inner landscape of the human mind. The left panel is the idyllic, subconscious, primal innocence. The central panel is the conscious self, overwhelmed by desire, fantasy, and chaos. The right panel is the shadow, the repressed fears and consequences of unchecked emotion. In this view, the garden is not about religion at all. It's about us, our psyche, laid bare in oil and color. Perhaps the true genius of the Garden of Earthly Delights is that all of these interpretations can be true simultaneously. It is a religious warning and a psychological map. It is an alchemical guide and a satire. It is a sermon, a dream, a prophecy, a confession, and above all, a mirror. It shows us what we want, what we fear, and what we become when we forget who we are. Was Bosch painting for the church? For a secret sect? For himself? Or for God? We may never know, but one thing is certain. His work transcends religion, politics, and even art itself. The Garden of Earthly Delights is not just a painting, it's a question. One that humanity has been trying to answer for over 5 centuries. Hieronymus Bosch died in 1516, leaving behind a legacy that baffled his contemporaries. His works were collected by nobles and kings, but they were often misunderstood, even dismissed as the ravings of a madman. The Garden of Earthly Delights eventually found its way into the collection of Philip II of Spain, a deeply religious monarch who saw in it not madness, but divine warning. It was placed in the Escorial Monastery, a place of prayer and reflection, where monks meditated on its terrifying visions of sin and salvation. During the Renaissance, Bosch was seen as an anomaly, too strange, too dark, too surreal for an era obsessed with harmony and order. But centuries later, romantic and symbolist artists would rediscover him, seeing in his work the depth of the human condition. Writers compared him to Dante. Philosophers saw in him the first visual existentialist. Surrealists called him their spiritual ancestor, a man who painted the unconscious long before Freud gave it a name. In the 20th and 21st centuries, Bosch's influence exploded. Salvador Dalí called The Garden of Earthly Delights a prophetic dream, painted centuries ahead of its time. Filmmakers like David Lynch and Guillermo del Toro cite Bosch as a direct inspiration. Even pop culture has embraced it, from album covers and video games to fashion and graphic novels. Its chaotic imagery has become a visual language for exploring desire, technology, apocalypse, and identity. Modern neuroscience and psychology use Bosch's painting to explore how humans interpret complex visual information. Its chaotic structure mirrors how the brain organizes and misorganizes meaning. Some cognitive scientists even argue that the garden is an early depiction of the networked mind, a world where everything is connected, everything is possible, and nothing is stable. It is, in a sense, a medieval vision of the internet age. In the end, the Garden of Earthly Delights is not just about sin, temptation, or punishment. It's about us. It is a mirror that reflects our fears, desires, contradictions, and hopes. It reminds us that humanity is capable of paradise and hell, often at the same time. That our greatest pleasures can become our greatest downfalls, and that the line between salvation and damnation is thinner than we want to believe. More than 500 years after it was painted, the Garden of Earthly Delights is still not fully understood, and maybe it never will be. But perhaps that's the point. It is not a puzzle to be solved, but a journey to be taken. A journey through human nature, morality, imagination, and the infinite possibilities of the soul. Bosch didn't just paint a garden. He painted the human condition itself.